Morning, team. Sun's up. It's beautiful. It came over the mountains today. I checked and Bitcoin's running. We got nothing to worry about, guys. Let's have our coffee and talk about hyper Bitcoinization in the news. We got Kevin Opar. Konnichiwa. It's morning, so it's Ohayo gozaimasu. Ohayo gozaimasu. And if Muslim Bitcoiner comes, I did indeed practice Assalamu alaikum today. So I'll be able to greet in Arab. But yeah, konnichiwa. If you didn't know, Kevin, I lived in Japan for a little while, and I'm a big Japanophile. My wife is actually half Japanese, and my children all keep Japanese middle names. I am a huge fan of Japan. And Korea, that sort of general part of the world. Lived in Korea for longer than I lived in Japan. But konnichiwa, indeed. I love the Japanese language. You know, anyone out there, if you want to learn a language that's super easy, Japan and Korean's even easier because the Korean alphabet is so easy. There's only 23 or 24 characters. If we all needed one alphabet in the world, it would be the Korean alphabet. It's actually the best system. It takes about a half an hour to learn the whole alphabet, believe it or not. I can read and write Korean. I don't know what I'm saying, but you know, I've got like a 200-word vocabulary in Korean. But importantly, the alphabet, the Hangul alphabet, you know, just take a T, for example, like this, right? Just two lines, and just rotate it, and that's all your vowels. A, I, E, U is all in there. And if you want to make it a long, you just add a line to the T, so it's like a double base T. And there's all your vowels. So of the 23 characters, that's like 10 of them. And then there's only a handful of consonants, and they're not hard to learn at all. And then here's why it's the best alphabet in the world. Because you actually take the characters, and 2 to 3 to 4 make a syllable, just like in you know, European languages. Except in the European way of writing, there is no way to tell when a syllable starts and ends and a new one starts and ends. So the Korean alphabet takes all that complexity away, and each it's almost like a square is just a collection of the letters that make up the syllable. So every like unit becomes a syllable. So you can't make a mistake, kind of. And Japanese is similar in the sense that it's very easy for Westerners to pronounce. Korean and Japanese are so, yeah, there we go. Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum. And I guess what we would say is Assalamu alaikum. But as I remembered, there's the response, wa alaykum assalam. Right? Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. But that's, I guess, the other part of peace be upon you. Which is a great hello, right? A great hello. So the konnichiwa, when you were mentioning that, Kevin, konnichiwa is the general good afternoon. But the best hello in the world, there's 2 of them, and they're both from Japan. So ogenki desu ka, I love, it's just, are you energized? And then you say, I'm energized, genki desu, right? Genki desu, I have energy. But it's not the best one. My family's from Osaka. And if you didn't know this, Osaka is one of the oldest cities in the world. That's still maintaining. There's like stores there that have been around for 800 years. And by city, I mean, when Rome fell, right? When Rome fell, London wasn't the first city in the world to have 1 million people after that. So Rome had 1 million people in the city, right? In the ancient Roman Empire, the actual city of Rome at its height was 1 million person city. Now, what does 1 million person in a city mean? It means you have 1 million people not farming. So you have to have very advanced agricultural economies and just economy in general in order to sustain 1 million people not farming. It's actually a real sign of civilizational development. So when Rome fell, the first city in the world to get 1 million people again was not London or Paris or any of these European towns. They were all Japanese. And Osaka, Tokyo came later. It was not a major city at first, but Osaka was. And I say all this because when you go to Korea or Japan, here's an amazing way to see the difference, let's say. Seoul was kind of not really a major metropolitan center before the Korean War. And after the Korean War, it grew really quickly. Now, the thing about Korea is it's the most Confucian country in the world. And by Confucian, I mean the most rules that are at play between people communicating, interacting in society. So the same way, you know, the assalamu alaikum means peace be upon you, but it's sort of religious. There's a simpler version to say. There's ways to speak to men and women. Well, take all those rules in the Arab language and multiply them by like 1,000,000, and then you get the Confucian way. Or even in English. Before in English, we used the word thou as a friendly word, and you was for, you know, we didn't really know you. That was sort of a way to describe someone you don't know. We just mixed them all. So in French, they still say tu for you, and that's for your friend, and then vous is you, but for people you don't know. So you wouldn't say tu to an older person in France, you'd say vous to an older person, because you're not supposed to be that familiar with them. Same rules, except in Korea, it's way greater. Now, the thing is, and there's a million things in Korean, like when I was there, young men would never smoke in the presence or in the face of an older man. Now, they would turn their back like this at a bar to smoke, right? They would just not show that they were smoking. The reason is they don't want to show to the older generation they're being lazy even for a minute, because they should be out there working. It's sort of disrespectful to say you're taking a break and to, you know, put it in their face. And the list goes on and on. That's just one small instance. So all this to say, Seoul grew really quickly, and it was hard to scale all these rules of social interaction into the city as it propelled forward. So what they ended up doing was the only answer. They sort of had to abandon civility in some ways, right? So to this day, when you get on a subway in Seoul, it's like a dog-eat-dog world. Like, people are elbowing you and bumping into you, and it's craziness, right? Absolute craziness. When you go into, and really rude, I mean rude to the point where you don't even, like, you can't imagine it, right? More rude than New York City, way more rude than New York City. Now, it takes a little while to adapt to. When you go to the countryside in Korea, then you get all the manners and the real politeness. But the thing is, it's such a burden to be so polite. That's why it was abandoned. They couldn't scale the Confucian politeness of the countryside into the cities. I'm mentioning all of this because, as I said, Seoul grew so quickly. If you contrast it with a city not far away, Osaka, they have been a city for 800 years now, something like that. And they've been a 1,000,000-person city for just as long. And as I said, the first cities to get to 1,000,000 people again were not European cities. They were over there. And to this day, and so all of this to set up the greatest hello in the world. And I'll say it to Japanese people and Kansai people, that's the area, and they laugh and crack up. So instead of o genki desu ka, konnichiwa, konbanwa, ohayo gozaimasu, all those other hellos, in Osaka, it's mokarimaka. Are you making money? And then you say, oh, it's been tough, you know? Now, the reason why it's so interesting is because Osaka has all the civility. They've been living in a city. They didn't have to scale it in the past 50 years. They've been living in a city for hundreds of years. And the people living there know how to live together. And it's amazing. You know, I've welcomed foreigners to Japan for their first visit before, and they'll say, like, downtown Tokyo or downtown Osaka, it's like so quiet. It's like a summer camp or something. You know, it's like being in the countryside. Well, that's the whole thing. It's the degree to which they are concerned with their neighbor, they're thoughtful to their neighbor, they're conscientious to their neighbor. They sort of scaled living in a city better than anyone. And they have these amazing expressions. Mokarimaka. Are you making money? Are you making money? Are you not making money? Am I making money? Are you making money? What a great, you know, that in the Bitcoin future, we got to be able to say that. Are you making money today? Are you making any money? I don't want to be too mercantile, but it's just a good way to say hello and full of energy. So now that we're here, let's talk about the fakest news that I found. I might start calling this segment Moscow Time, Moscow Time, Moscow Time. Everyone knows the Moscow Times story, of course. It was the fake news that went out of their way to, you know, try and figure out what Jack Dorsey was doing once when he was doing congressional testimony and his block clock behind him. So Bitcoiners have embraced the idea of Moscow Time as sort of an indictment of fake news and a good laugh. So as you know, on this show, I like to start the show every day with the fakest news I could find, right? So I'm thinking about doing I'm learning Japanese. I think it's much easier than people say. It's so easy, Hyper Bitcoinization podcast. It really is. Be confident in it because it's not hard at all. Here's why it's not hard. You can pronounce every word. Every word is pronounceable to a Westerner, and it's not hard to pronounce. So in Chinese, for example, and there's a few letters in Korean, like the K and the Ka. I could get a whole room of Korean people cracking up with just me trying to pronounce the letters the way I think they should be pronounced. They think it's like falling off of their chairs laughing. You know what I mean? Hilarious to them. Hilarious. It sounds the same to me because we're not trained to speak in this part of our voice box at all, or at least it doesn't have any articulation when we speak. Japanese is almost exactly like French, French has the R pronounced down here, but in general, all of the French language is pronounced literally on the tips of your lips and your tongue, which makes it really hard for some people to understand because it's so fine and let's say delicate, right? The way it's pronounced, the way it comes out of your mouth. It's almost like royal English, if you will, right? The way Queen's English, the way she speaks, she has sort of a lot of these syllables she doesn't even pronounce when they speak, right? If you ever see some of these dialect people talking about royal English, you'll see that there's entire letters they don't bother pronouncing, right? They're just low class to do so. French has a lot of that. In Quebec, it's less, but in French, it's a lot. In Japanese, it's literally zero. Everything they say is pronounced. Everything is easy to understand. If you turn it into just letters, you can read almost any word in the Japanese will be able to understand you, right? So that's the good news. Korean, almost there. The Korean grammar and the Japanese grammar are very similar. The reason why both languages, by the way, are easy to learn besides the pronunciation is they don't conjugate verbs. No verb conjugation, almost whatsoever. You can make a verb negative, like I didn't eat, right? There's a way to conjugate a verb that you didn't eat. But in general, what you do is at the beginning of every sentence, you just say past, present, or future, and then the verb is conjugated always more or less in the infinitive. As I said, there's a negative connotation. There can be a past conjugation. There's a suffix on the word for the past sometimes, but it's not difficult. You'll see, and you can really speak what we call pidgin, right? I don't deliver full sentences in any of these languages. I speak pidgin, like noun, subject, verb, figure it out, you know. But that's almost what the language is, right? So there's a few more articles, and I just skip over all that stuff. You'll learn it if you practice more, but they can figure you out pretty easily if you just use the noun, the verb, and the subject, and subject first, and then you'll be fine, you know. Amazing language. So here's the fakest news. There's two really fake stories, but this is the fakest Moscow time one I could find. So The Guardian has decided that, and we've talked about it on the show a few times, Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse. It's on Netflix right now. And, you know, he's sort of pushing back against the official narrative on the, he's pushing back on the official narrative on the antediluvian history, so pre-flood history. He's pushing back on the history of ancient Egypt, of pyramids, of ancient civilizations, and of the official historical record of humanity, right? So Graham Hancock's been doing this for a long time, and he's an investigative journalist, and he first was curious about this because of the reaction he got to talking about this stuff. It made people so angry, a little bit like our experience in Bitcoin, right? You know, when we, especially in the early days, talked about getting into Bitcoin, and we thought Bitcoin was a good idea. You can't issue money that isn't from the government. It was the same idea. And we're like, then you'd say, well, but fiat currency's only been around for like 100 years. And people would say, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Same idea, right? So here's their headline from The Guardian. Ancient Apocalypse is the most dangerous show on Netflix. And that wasn't, at first I read it, I was like, ooh, they're into it. This is going to be like, this is like an advertisement, you know, for the show. No. They mean it straight. So the byline is, a show with a truly preposterous theory is one of the streaming giant's biggest hits, and it seems to exist solely for conspiracy theorists. Why has this been allowed? We shouldn't have been allowed to see it. We shouldn't have been allowed, right? Excellent stuff. So Graham Hancock put together a list of all the fake news that has come out against his show. Here's his tweet. Archaeologists and their friends in the media are spitting nails about my Ancient Apocalypse series on Netflix and want me canceled. So here's some of the headlines. This is from Wales Online. Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse Netflix series promotes racist conspiracy theories. Racist, claim archaeologists. Fishy Netflix Atlantis show needs a big pinch of salt, say archaeologists. The ancient absurdities of Ancient Apocalypse. With Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse, Graham Hancock has declared war on archaeologists. And it goes on like this, right? So everyone's super angry, don't do it. But like I said, if you don't read the byline, the Guardian headline is the best advertisement I've seen. I can only imagine the show getting popular now that people are warning against it. You know what works? Warning against watching a show to keep people from watching it. It always works. If you say don't watch it, sure, no one's going to watch it now, right? So thank you, Guardian, for your service. So that could have been the fakest story. Well, I think it was the fakest story. This one's pretty fake. Now, I got to put a caveat first, all right? As you know, on this show, we are extremely pro LGBTQ+, right? We believe that, of course, the nuclear family with a man and a woman and kids is probably the best thing for the kids out there, but it's not available to everyone. You know, these things exist for real, and we have to love our neighbor, and we have to love everyone in the world and accept that people have this capacity to change. And if it means that's what's required for them to be happy, I'm here for it, right? So just so we know, first off, let me just say that right off the bat. So I don't want to laugh at trans people. They're not, I'm not joking, none of those things, okay? But and then one more caveat before I go on, because what I'm going to say is limit. We also don't think in any way that mass shootings in the United States are funny, right? They're bad. We don't talk about them on the show normally, and I was reluctant to bring in a story of mass shootings onto this show because it's not, there's plenty of places you can go to see that stuff, right? Plenty of other shows where they talk about that. So remember, we are normally not here to talk about mass shootings at all, right? We're not interested in that kind of story on this show. There's other places you can go. Normally, there's nothing funny about it, right? Comma, we are very pro LGBTQ+. Okay, keep that in your head. Just make sure you understand that before we go to the next one, right? So now watching CNN handle a mass shooting coverage like the one we just had in Colorado Springs, where there was some questions about trans and LGBTQ+, and all the things that happened. Now, they tried to blame the shooter for being, at first, he was a conservative and it was Trump's fault and this and that, right? But it turns out the shooter has declared themselves non-binary, which means you can't actually have a hate crime because it's sort of non-binary and non-binary. It's not like targeting another group. It turns into I don't know what, but it's not, you know, it's a lover's quarrel, maybe, we don't know. But the news trying to report on this in terms of Trump's rhetoric and anti-LGBTQ+ and the hatred of politics has created a situation where LGBTQ+ people are vulnerable, and this mass shooting was a manifestation of that, right? Okay, so, and here's the funny part, right? So there is a funny part. I had to put all that stuff because somehow there's humor in this, believe it or not. And it's watching CNN try to live by the rules they set, right? They set the rules that if you declare yourself to be a different gender, that you can't be misgendered, right? So this murderer, right? Murderer, scum of the earth murderer, has declared themselves to be non-binary, so CNN has to cover it by using the preferred pronouns. So they're using the preferred pronouns to talk about the murderer, and it's humorous. I will say it's funny to hear them, right? Like CNN trying to go straight, but on this one they're reverting to their humorous ways. But it got even crazier. They brought a woman, a trans woman, right? Trans woman onto the show. They brought a trans woman onto the show, right? Which is good, right? But here's where things get crazy. The trans woman they brought to talk about the situation, to talk about the murderer being non-binary, and the trans woman came out and said on CNN that she can look at a photo of the Colorado Springs shooter and know that that person is not non-binary. That's a man. Right? Now, but if you'd see the picture of the woman, the trans woman, on CNN, saying that I can look at a picture and determine if it's a man or a woman, right? I wonder if she would agree to the same level of standard for us. Because if I look at her picture, well, kind of looks like a guy to me. Right now, I live by the rules. That's no problem. Someone says that they're trans, I will 100% acknowledge it. In fact, I've said on this show, I'm not with Jordan Peterson and what he did to Elliot Page. And I'm not a supporter of Elliot Page, don't like his movies or art or anything. Nothing. I'm not a fan. But if that person is happier and did all that work and I understand Jordan Peterson's excuse. He says he is promoting the thing now. Okay, so I have space for Jordan Peterson. I just disagree with him on this, right? I do. That's not a joke, right? I definitely do. But this CNN story, I mean, you got to see this person, right? Going and saying, and CNN just covering it straight, right? Like, you can tell the difference. Wow, that you know the person's non-binary. Okay, what if we did that? We'd be in trouble. It's hilarious. Maybe not. Maybe not. I think it's hilarious. All right. Speaking of trans, this is an important story. And this is from the Washington Post. This is a huge story, And now we're going to get into the Bitcoin stuff. So, well, first Apple and Google, but I'll show you how it's related to Bitcoin. So the Washington Post now covering all the issues with Twitter and Elon and what's going on and who's complaining now and what's the next problem. So they're now talking about all of the amnesty that Elon gave the other day. So here's a quote that they put in. Apple and Google need to seriously start exploring booting Twitter off the App Store. Whoa, off the App Store. Said Alejandra Caraballo, clinical instructor at Harvard's cyber law clinic. What Musk is doing is existentially dangerous for various marginalized communities. It's like opening the gates of hell in terms of the havoc it will cause. So if you didn't know, Alejandra Caraballo is a biological man who identifies as a woman and is one of the most toxic and abusive people on the site. This is from Joel Berry. So Washington Post quotes this Harvard law professor who themselves, which we're for, right? We have a lot of space for that. But the point is here, it's she, Alejandra, she is pushing for Twitter to be off the App Store, which we predicted on this show. So on this show, we like to make predictions and then come back and see if they're true. We predicted a few days ago that when the effort to suppress advertisers at Twitter didn't work out, they'd be moving to the App Store as the choke point. And we saw and mentioned right away when Apple folks started pulling their Twitter accounts down because they said they're not comfortable with it. And we predicted that Tim Apple would be a tool of the state and would probably implement this at some point. And now it looks like it's going on. Even as far as the success of the advertising push, well, NPR says that Twitter has lost 50 of its top 100 advertisers since Elon Musk took over. So they've been successful, right? The attack vector of advertisement looks successful. Now, did they get the results they want? Is Twitter going to fail because of it? I don't think so. The numbers look good to me, but I'm only going on what I see, and they've reduced headcount and a few other things. But what we see here is exactly what we predicted on the show, that the rhetoric, that the frame of people attacking Twitter and Elon would move towards the App Store. And indeed, this is a in-print inside of the Washington Post, Democracy Dies in Darkness paper, advocating for just that. So now Elon is aware of this, right? People are saying, oh, Elon, what are you going to do if they use this attack vector, if they go after you on the App Store? Well, Elon had one of the best answers I've ever heard to this problem. So here it is. If this is Liz Wheeler, if Apple and Google boot Twitter from their app store, Elon Musk should produce his own smartphone. Half the country would happily ditch the biased, snooping iPhone and Android. The man builds rockets to Mars. A silly little smartphone should be easy, right? And Elon Musk responds, I certainly hope it does not come to that. But yes, if there is no other choice, I will make a smartphone. He's going to get in the phone business now. I'd buy his phone. Who wouldn't buy his phone, right? Of course. And if we're also right, we continue to make the prediction here that he will integrate a payments network and it will be Bitcoin and Lightning into Twitter. I could be wrong, but I continue to believe he's going to integrate Bitcoin, that his goal of finally creating the X app and PayPal will be built on top of built on top of Twitter. So there you go. But it would be great if he comes up with his own phone, right? It would be great if he comes up with his own phone. So, but that's not the only attack vector right now. There's a new fake news story out today. New talking points just dropped. The new attack vector just dropped. And here it is. It's from Forbes. We love Forbes. Remember Forbes, the great articles they've been writing about SBF, and they're excellent, right? So Forbes, Elon Musk inherited Twitter's child abuse nightmare. Experts say he's making it worse. Wah, wah, wah. So now it went from the hate speech stuff, then it went into App Store, and now it's all the way to he's not doing enough to protect the children, right? But here's what he's doing. So he comes out and says, users can now report child stuff on Twitter. Forbes, Elon's making it worse, right? Because he fired employees. Now, we follow Eliza Blue here. She said it's never been better, right? To those who aren't aware yet, last week Twitter did add a direct reporting option for this stuff, and sort of going over all the differences that it's making. So you still have people out there, trying to say that what is white is actually black. Right? Like, is he not doing more than anyone? Can we not just give him credit for making a little bit of progress so far? But no, it's that he's making it worse. And of course, it's experts, right? I read the article for the experts say it's all a bunch of nonsense, right? There's absolutely no categorical proof at all in the article that it got worse. It's just people saying, oh, now it's a little harder and who knows and what's going on. Andrew Tate, who's back online, had one of the best summaries of all this stuff going on. And he says, the large cash pools of the West are moving away from Twitter purely for removing the child Hong Kong and allowing open discussion. What does this tell you about those who control the money? Andrew Tate, on top of this. And I want to mention, let's just take 1 second here to think of the cascade of anti-Elon and Twitter stuff. Now, remember, it started with, oh, he's a dumb businessman. He paid $44 billion. He's going to go bankrupt. What an idiot, right? And then it was, oh, he fired the marketing department and the workers and the engineers. What's going on? It's going to collapse, right? So it went from he wasted money, he's a stupid business person. And then the complaints became, it's going to collapse anytime because he's firing everybody. Right? What are we going to do? And now it's down to he fired the wrong people and compliance is not as great. And here's the newest fake story that they're trying to drum up. It is that FT exclusive. Twitter has disbanded its entire Brussels office, sparking concerns among EU officials about whether the social media platform will abide by the bloc's stringent new rules on policing online content. So it's like a compliance issue, right? So it went from bad business to where are the engineers, this thing's going to collapse. And now the whole frame of catastrophe hinges on compliance. It's gone down to the compliance people in the European Union. Like, Imagine our loss if some stranded Europeans can't participate in all the fighting on Twitter. Well, you know, okay, all right, it's great stuff. So, so just watching the cascade of doomsday, and watching it try to approach reality, right, where it is now. Like, you fire these people. How many engineers do you need, right? The hardcore engineers were enough. All the other ones were stupid, obviously, right? He said, I only want the hardcore ones. It worked, right? Does Elon Musk need a marketing department? No, absolutely not. No, Twitter's never been more popular. He doesn't have marketing departments in any of his companies. Tesla doesn't have a marketing department. SpaceX doesn't have a marketing department. Starlink doesn't have a marketing department, right? His new phone is not going to have a marketing department. He's not going to need one. He's not going to need one, right? So there you go. This is just one of those cases that's sort of, you know, orange pilling people more and more, but there's other orange pill cases out there. Here's one. So The Economist writes today that the European energy crisis is a reminder that, for all their technological sophistication, even rich world economies must rely on the whims of nature. Yeah, for the first time in like 200 years. We didn't in Europe. I'm not European, but Europeans didn't live by the whims of nature. They had electricity. They knew how to harness oil and the combustion engine. They haven't been living by the whims of nature in literally hundreds of years. Do you think in Texas they live by the whims of nature? There would be no Texas if we lived by the whims of nature. Where I am here in Quebec, do you think we live by the whims of nature? Obviously not. We knew how much that sucked. We used to do it hundreds of years ago, right? We built the biggest dams on Earth. We have unlimited energy. Quebec will run as long as gravity works. It's that simple. We have the most amazing energy system on Earth. It can't be stopped. 2 people and their brother could keep it going, right? It's that simple. Grab waterfalls. Okay, we have unlimited electricity. Great. We don't even have to build it again, right? We built it all years ago when people still had the capacity to build this kind of stuff. So it's done. So we don't live by the whims of nature. If we lived by the whims of nature in Quebec, we'd all be dead. It's minus 40 degrees regularly. We'd be dead a long time ago, right? We don't live through the whims of nature. So you've got The Economist here saying, these same Europeans that won't be able to have compliance for Twitter, right, are now living by the whims of nature. No, we don't live by the whims of nature, right? Terrible reminder, terrible reminder. The whole point of what we do is to not live by the whims of nature, right? That's what being a human is. That's what Prometheus did for us. Prometheus stole fire, inventions, so that we literally aren't an animal and living with nature. That's not our thing. It's not our thing. Like, that's for the rabbits, right? Speaking of, I caught a weasel in my house 2 days ago. A weasel, beautiful little guy like this, baby, white, all white. You know, he lives by the whims of nature, right? I put him back outside, and he went right under the snow, and you could hear him tunneling through, and he popped up a little while later, right? That's the whims of nature, right? There's no whims of nature that humans are supposed to live by, right? Now, we can have hurricanes and all that stuff, but what's the point of our satellites to know when the hurricane's coming? That is to manage nature. That's what we're here for, right? That's mission one, right? Mission one. The Economist here priming everyone for their ridiculous winter energy situation. Now, the ridiculous winter energy situation is a big boon to Bitcoiners, right? And it looks like this. Now, it's not pretty, but it's a boon, and I'll explain why. It looks like this whole Russia-Ukraine situation from the beginning, and we've been talking about it from the beginning on this show. We have said from day one, this is really about American energy companies just knocking out the competition, right? And you know, it's a bit for the American military because their competition in Russia is collateral damage in this. If they can't have an economy, they can't fund their military, so that's done, right? And we see, even when the Nord Stream thing happened here, we said, who cares about who actually did it? American Energy backstopped the decision to do it, which means American Energy in its own way is responsible for it, right? If they weren't in the captain's chair, probably doesn't have any trouble. So if you listen to, you know, this is from Fisher King. listening to neocon radio today, heard that it's great that the US is backing Ukraine because all the money is actually staying in the US, meaning arms manufacturers are getting rich. Also, the Russian army is being depleted, which is also great. They're entirely open about it all. The plan really is, one, American arms manufacturers make big money. I would say plan number one is not that. It's American energy companies make a lot of money. So I'm disagreeing a little bit with Fisher King here. And I think it's a big difference, right? I think the primacy of order here is not the industrial war machine. I think there's one level above, and it's American energy. Never forget, the petrodollar was the organizing principle. The military helped keep it in place, but the organizing principle was the petrodollar and the energy. So I continue to believe American energy companies are the head of this whole dragon, which is good news for us, because these are much more easily corruptible entities than the industrial war machine and the politicians. We just have to make the energy companies rich, right? We just have to make them rich. How are we going to do that? Well, the best news I've heard in a long time. Here it is. The future is with us. Our beautiful state of Texas, with its own constitution, the very state that has recently declared war on drug cartels and fentanyl, has again taken the lead. They have now put out a Bitcoin, what do they call it? A report on the members of the Texas legislature for how to use, they call it blockchain, but it's really a Bitcoin report, right? From the 9th largest economy in the world. So the new Bitcoin report from the 9th largest economy in the world, Texas, right? So if Texas separated from America, it would be the 9th largest economy. California would be 4th, Texas would be the 9th largest. So almost as big as all the big Western European countries. So just behind Italy, for example, right? Just behind Italy. What does the report recommend? Government hodling Bitcoin, self-custody protection, tax breaks for Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin education in schools, and a Bitcoin workforce initiative. But it's the tax rates for Bitcoin mining that I wanted to underline. Texas should create a severance tax abatement for natural gas that was once flared but is now being consumed on site. Excellent. So right away, being more efficient, tax abatement benefits, incentivizes Bitcoin mining, right? Texas should incentivize controllable loads like Bitcoin mining by lessening the tax burden on the purchase of electricity when it is used to power a Bitcoin mine or large flexible load that participants in ancillary services with the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. Anyway, the point is, if you are a load-bearing mine and you actually allow Texas to run the whole grid hotter, and that you're willing to disperse that energy in a time of need, you get an incentive to do that, right? So if you can plug into the grid, help the state when it has troubles, civilian weather, again, we're controlling nature, right? We're mitigating the damage of nature. Texas has had some of the worst storms we've seen in the past decade, right? With the huge floods and the storm surge and ice storms. It's an inhospitable environment. Again, I've made the argument for a long time. We would never have made Texas what Texas is without the air conditioner. So that's just at the beginning of the manipulation required to populate Texas, right? But we did it, right? We did it. We have it. I continue to predict that the next thing with even much more increased energy harnessing and manipulation is the North. I think we're going to be colonizing the entire North. It's in my book. You'll see huge cities, right? So this is great news. And speaking of the dollar issues, right? Speaking of the dollar issues with the petrodollar, well, here's what Ghana is planning to do. Ghana plans to buy oil with gold now instead of the US dollars, right? So another leak in the boat, another leak in the aircraft carrier of the petrodollar, right? Ghana, not a big economy, right? Quite small. Turns out they've only got about 9 billion in total reserves. 6 billion in total reserves. It's been depleted by about 3 billion recently. Money's not quite going far enough. It's not all a good news story. Selling their hard currency for oil is a sign that the economy is not great. I don't think they're taking any Bitcoin principled stance here, but what it shows is the monopoly of the oil for dollar market is broken. We predicted this would fall apart over time. The minute the BRICS responded to the Ukraine war with a new market for oil that was based on won and renminbi and rubles or whatever else is going on. So we knew that the monopoly on energy and the US dollar was broken then, and this is just further confirmation of it. So there you go. Now, our last story today. So let me just tie it in, right? Let me just tie it into the before I do our last story for today. So today we said the ancient apocalypse, Netflix's ancient apocalypse, right, could bring on a Bitcoin fiat apocalypse. Well, the argument is simply this. It's the amount of orange pilling opportunities, like maximum orange pilling opportunities that are being presented to people every day are larger and harder to miss than ever, right? You've got all this stuff happening now. It goes as deep as Netflix and some show on ancient aliens. Experts, get the experts in here. Get them in here. Tell them this is all stupid, right? Oh no, don't look there. We've got Twitter trying to solve other problems. Don't look. No. Get some experts, right? Get that expert from Harvard. Don't worry about it, right? They'll tell you that the trans thing is still really bad and all the other stuff's really bad. Oh, don't look over there either. No. Energy, that's not important. No. It's fine. Nature, it's nature. You're just living with nature. Don't worry about it, right? It's not a big deal, right? It's not a big deal. Now you've got Ghana, inflation, right? Makes their US dollar reserve to buy oil not as useful, so they're going to be using gold. No. The gold market's US dollar, it's fine. Don't answer. Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. So these stories keep coming up, right? And the amount of opportunity to jump out has never been bigger. Look at the Wall Street Journal yesterday, right? The Wall Street Journal came out with a headline yesterday, the front page, right below the fold, full color picture, below the fold. FTX collapse wiped out Fander's philanthropic aims. I mean, burn the paper. If this isn't one of the greatest orange pills you've ever seen, right? I don't know what is, right? I don't know what is. All right. So that's all I got. And then I guess, even look at healthcare, right? Look at healthcare. I mentioned the Texas thing with the cartels that have declared war on fentanyl and the cartels, and I think you're going to see military action. Once things change in America a little more, you're going to see military action in Mexico against the cartels. And you think of all these gateway red pills. Here's one from Raw Egg Nationalist, and I'll tie it into the story of Mexico in a second, right? In my most recent article for The American Mind, I said that hospital food is a gateway pill. And then he says, well, Japanese trains are another one. It's true. I know Hyper-Bitcoinization podcast, you're learning Japanese. If you do have a trip coming up or planning a trip to Japan, let me know. I'm a great Japanese trip planner. And he's making this argument here that Japanese trains are another gateway red pill. And he says, why can't we in the West have nice things like clean trains that run on time, are safe and staffed by polite people, right? Why indeed? So asking all these questions, right? About just how terrible the train services and all these public infrastructures are. Is it really a question of will? Are we too stupid? Right? Is that really it? Right? I don't think so. So, and indeed, when you look at hospital food, right, it's filled with seed oils. It's just complete garbage. And just take that for a second and say, well, if they're going to feed that food to you for the prices they're charging you at American hospitals, are they doing anything right? Are they doing anything right? It's just sugar and garbage at every one of the hospitals. The meals are terrible. If we got what we paid for, right? I pay over $2,000 a month, US dollars, for healthcare for my family. And that doesn't even get me anything. That doesn't even get me to my premium. I still have to pay another $3,000 if I use the services, right? But in all rights, for paying that kind of money, I should get like a private chef. It should be better than a hotel. I mean, way better, but it's not even close, right? You can't get steak, you can't get meat, you can't get eggs, you can't get anything. Eggs, powdered eggs, whipped up into some kind of cream. It's disgusting, right? And my kids were born in one of the best hospitals in the world. My second daughter is born on Central Park, like literally where Beyonce had her kids. Mount Sinai on Central Park, right? View of the park. Disgusting food, disgusting, inedible. I had to go out and get stuff for my wife all the time. She was diabetic when she had her kids. She gets some gestational diabetes. Some mothers get that. It's like a survival thing where all of their sugars go to the baby to grow the baby. So all my babies are premature, but like 9 pounds. they're enormous, right? Enormous preemies. And by preemie, I mean, they're born sort of the minute they're capable of coming out and surviving on their own because they're so big, because of this diabetes thing, right? But gestational diabetes is cured the minute you have a baby. So the minute your body knows there's no baby, I mean, literally the minute. So, I'd have to get my wife delicious food. She's usually off food for months that's delicious before she can do it again. So there you go. I have experience with how disgusting it is. And it is one of these gateway red pill things, because you look at it and you say, oh shit, like, if they're feeding us that, how interested in our health can they really be? Well, here's another way to even see it, right? So it's that health part, but with all that happened with COVID and our now increased skepticism about the healthcare industry, all of it, right? And again, thinking about what's going on with our advertising. Don't forget who does all of our advertising on our news, all of it, right? If you watch any CNN, Fox, it's just pharmaceutical companies, right? They're the only advertisers. They look at the captive audience of old people watching 24-hour news and they say, well, those are our people, right? Let's just pump persuasion at them and see what happens. So again, the food they feed you should be an indication. What's going on with the vaccines and all that stuff should be another. But here's a way to frame it all. It's pretty ironic how we tend, and this is from Soncharm. This is I found it in Mike Cernovich's Twitter feed, but here's what he retweeted. Pretty ironic how we tend to have this view of Mexico and perhaps some South American countries as being totally corrupt narco states. And meanwhile, Big Pharma apparently owns our entire government / establishment now and makes the cartels look like lemonade stands. I don't think there are many narco states that have the government bureaucracies mandating the product for 3-year-olds. It's true. It's true. Still think not many of us are making it out of this change. Fiat, food, health, education. Yeah, I'm afraid you're right, Muslim Bitcoiner. I'm afraid a lot won't make it. There's only so much you can do. That's why I'm for the CBDCs. I'm not going to lie. I think if we get, it's a way to slow walk hyper-Bitcoinization, it's a way to slow walk orange pilling them, or at least make it their choice, right? Because here's the thing about even the whole frame of orange pilling. I don't like the rape aspect, right, of pilling, because people do that in America. They pill people's drinks. So I've never liked the pilling. I don't like it. It doesn't feel like medicine the way it's said, right? It feels like involuntary. Now, look, I still use it. I don't think it's not like I'm on a public campaign to get rid of the expression orange pilling. I'm not. Like, it doesn't really bother me. It's just not ideal. I find it's a little unsettling. I wouldn't want to be the one. I've been credited with orange pilling many people, but I'd rather it's something like they got me in, they infected me with Bitcoin even, or they spread Bitcoin to me, or I don't know. There's a better way. Now, the pill being medicine, I think, is a way to recapture the use of it. The orange pilling seems a little involuntary. I'm being sensitive, right? I'm being sensitive. I don't really, like I said, I'm not so worried about it, but I wish there was a way for us to underline it. It's like a medicine, like a prescription orange pill, not from a system, but from, people who want you to be better. So there you go. We could talk about the Yay Milo stuff before I go. Yeah, a lot of people saying, I agree. It's Bitcoin is medicine. Yeah, non-violational. Yeah, I find it's just a choice of words thing. I don't think anyone has that intention or means it or whatever. It just seems like you snuck it the way we use it, right? It's like the pills you sneak. We don't need to sneak Bitcoin. We don't have to go in the back door, right? We go in the front door. Bitcoin is medicine. Kids in the Hall woke skit. I got to check it out. I got to check. So James Gant, I'm assuming you're Canadian, if you know the Kids in the Hall. Kids in the Hall was a Canadian, like a Saturday Night Live comedy troupe that was really popular when I was a kid. And a lot of the people have had pretty great careers in America since news radio with Joe Rogan had one of the big stars on it as well from Kids in the Hall. You'll see them, they're around here and there, those actors. But it was really funny. I liked it. It was the only good thing that's ever come out of Canadian public television, as far as I can tell. So the Ye thing. So everyone's saying that Ye has destroyed Trump and could be a plant, could be a controlled opposition. I don't know if any of that's true. I brought it up yesterday. I said Sticks, Hex, and Hammer thought it was fishy. I keep looking for descriptions of it, but it looks like it did kill Trump. I mean, it could anyway. Because from now on, anyone's going to say, well, what was Trump doing with Nick Fuentes and all these people, right? Now, I barely know, I don't know much about Nick, don't know anything, right? Not someone I followed really. I'm always been busy with Bitcoin, and I'm definitely a fan of Trump and what's going on, and definitely a fan of Kanye. But more and more people are saying that Kanye is controlled opposition and was really just there to taint Trump and make sure his candidacy doesn't go anywhere. It turns out Paul Ryan might have been involved. That's what some rumors are saying, that I guess Milo Yiannopoulos is tied to Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan, if you don't know, was the Republican speaker. And a lot of people, myself included, had a lot of problems with early Trump presidents. So the people who loved candidate Trump for the laughs and the irreverence and the craziness, like Cernovich liked that Trump, right? A lot of people loved not even Republican candidate Trump, presidential candidate Trump. Republican nomination Trump was really the best comedy, the best stand-up, the most energy, the most irreverent, the craziest, the most fun time you could have had being a Trump supporter when everything seemed possible. But a lot of people like Cernovich dumped Trump the moment he, after getting elected, sided with all of the Paul Ryans and the GOP and the established Republicans. Many people at the time said, Trump's lost. Whatever he's doing now is the wrong thing. He's got to go with the people who made him, go with the people who got him here. Forget trying to get the Republican agenda legislated, right? And in the end, Cerno and everyone was right. Those people backstabbed Trump. They were never his friend. They abandoned him the minute there was trouble in the 2020 election. And a lot of people will never forgive Trump for that because he wasted the opportunity to destroy the Googles and the other people who would not let us talk about the things we want to talk about. And that's where even the Ann Coulter complaints come from, that Trump didn't do with his time what he should have done in order to guarantee that we don't have to do it again. And he could have ended the trouble when he had the chance. And so there are people who hate Trump for that. And so seeing these people caught up in that business. Now, you can say that Kanye is controlled opposition and it was designed to destroy Trump. That could be true, right? That could absolutely be true. I see it. Like, I'm not going to say I don't see it. Right? I see it. Now, I don't want to believe it's true because I like Kanye, right? I like what Kanye could be, right? Mental illness, all that stuff is real, right? We can't deny that. Now, I don't have a problem with it in the sense that, does Elon have mental illness? I think so. Like, no, but mental illness, like, it doesn't mean you're depressed or whatever. He's different, right? These people are different. And like Hyperbitcoinization's podcast yesterday, Tricksters podcast, his Hyperbitcoinization podcast, the article, you guys should all read it, by the way. I read it. Excellent, about mythology and Ragnarok and the trickster archetype, right? So the archetypes that Carl Jung talks a lot about from ancient mythology and how these archetypes are still all in us. And he goes into the return of the trickster. Yeah. So I recommend it. If you guys really want to see how the psychological elements will play out in hyperbitcoinization. It's not math. We're not winning this because some accountant goes, oh, damn, they counted better. That's not what's going to happen, right? They're not going to write us in their wills. Like, the transfer of wealth is not a bunch of boomers who wrote us into their wills and then we just turn into Bitcoin, right? That's not how it's going to go. Unfortunately, they're going to lose their money on things like SBF and FTX and all the other false idols they've been praying to. So, so this underlines how the psychological path for Bitcoin could play out, because it's all about balance. It's all about finding an end to these stories that are in our mind. And there are ways they come to an end that are beyond our control and happen really suddenly and quickly. And I continue to think that's how Bitcoin will take over, right? It's going to be shocking. It's not because an expert tweets out, "Oh, dang, I did the math." It's not like we're going to get hyper Bitcoinization because Jerome Powell goes, "Oh boy, I did that wrong." I'm into Bitcoin now. It's not. I mean, it'll be good, I guess, but it's not going to do it, right? People have to lose on FTX. They have to get destroyed in their fiat world, and that's what Hyper Bitcoinization podcast really underlines. That you have to incinerate your fiat self, and it has to be destroyed. And don't forget the actual story of Jesus, right? The resurrection piece. Forget about the heaven and all that for a second, right? The actual resurrection of Jesus Christ, that life is forever and that he came back to life, is about us every day. We have to kill ourselves and be reborn, not every day, but over cycles, right? You are constantly in flux, in change. And the way to understand that is to let things die and be reborn. And it's a microcosm of our brains, of our mental health, of our life, and then probably our afterlife, right? That looks like it's all lined up that way. So, that's where it is. Bitcoiners are already in the So, and that, I really like that frame. So Hyper Bitcoinization podcast says here, Bitcoiners are already in the post-apocalypse. Unveiling already done. I think so. Yeah. I had that put to me in a certain way in 2017. So one of the really cool things I've been good at is block time estimations and like major events in Bitcoin, estimating the day on which they happened. So for example, I threw a dart in 2019 to the day I thought the Bitcoin halving would happen in 2020, and I hit it right on. And I was able to plan, even with COVID coming to influence us, in 2020, a 24-hour broadcast around the world about Bitcoin with all kinds of speakers and blah, 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 right? So I did that with CoinDesk. I was the producer of that. But one of the coolest, honestly amazing darts I ever threw was in the summer of 2017, when the markets were going crazy. I said to the CoinDesk folks, we're going to do a Wall Street Bitcoin show, not an engineering show, not technical, not any of those things, right? We're not, because we had been doing our own show. Everyone thought of CoinDesk as like an engineering, blockchains, technical magazine, let's say a technical journal, right? And I said, that's true, but we're also dealing with Wall Street stuff. And I said, we're going to do a full Wall Street event with Wall Street people. Hash rate is just a key price indicator. The vocabulary on the stage is going to be Wall Street. That was Arthur Hayes' first appearance in a show. That was, I got a bunch of Wall Street people. It's where the CME announced its futures contract. So I turned it into the venue where they announced their futures contract. And here's what I did. I went, I think Thanksgiving 2017 is going to be one of the most incredible times for Bitcoin. It was a guess, but I could see the engine running, and I made a prediction that right after that Thanksgiving was the best day to put this event. I said, if that's happening, the world will advertise for us because everyone's going to be talking about Bitcoin by then. And of course, I was so right. Bitcoin became the biggest story in 2017's Thanksgiving, so 5 years ago today. And when we got out of the Thanksgiving, my show was conveniently the day we got back from Thanksgiving. And what happened that day? It was the first day Bitcoin hit $10,000 in the US dollar exchange rate. And it happened live on my stage. It happened live on stage. And we got some of the greatest press you'll ever read in the world. We got like CNBC saying, Bitcoin crosses $10,000. Packed conference parties into the night. Like, it was great stuff, and all kinds of news, all kinds of articles and publications and all that stuff, right? But here was the best lesson I learned that day. the best lesson I learned that day, and this is to tie into hyper-Bitcoinization's comment that we are living in the post-apocalypse, unveiling already done. So downtown Josh Brown, if you guys don't know him, he was like one of these Wall Street guys who was interested in Bitcoin. And as I said, I wanted a Wall Street show, right, to talk about markets and things like that. So he was sort of my closing. I was supposed to have Chamath Palihapitiya, but he dropped out last minute because he was getting divorced. But he was supposed to be my closing keynote. So he dropped out last minute. So I put downtown Josh Brown there, and with Howard Linzon from StockTwits. And I had been hanging around with downtown Josh Brown a little bit that autumn, just, you know, evangelizing. I was evangelizing everybody at the time, right? It was like just going to every office. Tom Lee had never heard about Bitcoin, and I was there telling him what was up, and then he became one of the biggest bulls you'll ever see. I was just out, you know, mixing it up and turning people into what we needed. And so in the last keynote, he said to us, he goes, no, because you know, he'd spent a lot of time with me and he was spending time with Nick Carter at the time and all kinds of folks. And so him and I were, you know, he was on stage and he goes, it's been neat meeting you guys. It's been great. And not only that, here's some advice I have for you going forward. And this is exactly what Hyper-Bitcoinization podcast has said. He says, you know, happiness and money and this and that. He goes, look, I'm rich. You know, I've been rich for a long time. That's what he's saying to us, right? But you guys, you know, when they say happiness, they can sort of study it with money when it comes to lotteries. They said lottery winners are happiest from the moment they found out they won the lottery to the moment they cash in the lottery ticket. After that, the problems start. After that, the headaches, the family, the disappointments, all the politics, all of it start, right? But the true happiness is right there, right between the time where you got the ticket, you know you won, and you cash it in. Not a lot of people know. It's all just good stuff, right? And he says on stage to us, right, as Bitcoin is hitting $10,000, he goes, you people look to me like you've had a winning lottery ticket in your pockets for years, but only you knew it. No one else knew it. And you believed it, and you got to live your life as if you had already won, and you've been making all these decisions and doing all this stuff while no one really noticed. And now that we're here, he goes, you're going to have all kinds of new problems and all kinds of new stresses, but just remember that time in your life when you knew you had the winning ticket and no one else did. And what you're saying there, now I understand it's just a lottery ticket, and I don't want to compare lottery tickets to the mythical forces of apocalypse and unveiling and those things. But it's similar in the sense that we're already living in the future. We are from the future. That's why we're alchemists, right? That's why I say anyone who's in Bitcoin is a true alchemist, because alchemists, nothing to do with turning metal into gold. That was a psyop to protect them from the Spanish Inquisition. The true goal of alchemy was to harness the energy in your body and manifest gold on earth, heaven on earth, right? To create actual gold out of your thoughts and your direction and all these things. And gold also can just be, you know, calculus, things that humans can use to gather more treasure. And you know, that's what Bitcoiners are already aware of. That's why it's the food and the education and the health, and even just not jumping to conclusions and giving people some space, you know? So that's it, guys. That's it. That's all I got for today. That's all I got for today. I'm heading to Montreal for a birthday party tonight, and I'll be staying in a hotel. I will try and do a show in the morning. Yeah, this is, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Hyper-Bitcoinization podcast says, yeah. So I'm going to try and do the show tomorrow. I will tweet if there's any trouble with the internet. It's a nice hotel. There should be fine. I've done a show from there before last year without too much trouble. So it will be a short one, but going out tonight with some friends and celebrating a birthday of a friend of mine. And I will be at the hotel tomorrow morning, and I will see you there. It's not so far, Kevin. I'm an hour outside of Montreal as it is, so it's a short trip. But I am looking forward to it. I miss Montreal. I haven't been back in a few weeks, or months even at this point. I've been in New York and Toronto a lot more than I have in Montreal. All right, team. Enjoy your day. See you tomorrow, hopefully.